All right, hey everybody, welcome back to Field Pass Podcast. This is Zach here again, donning his Seahawks jersey of shame. Braden wasn't able to make it tonight. We have some crazy holiday plans, so we called in Andy today to help us out with this week's recap. We're going into 2 weeks left here in the regular season, so as things are heating up, we wanted to give you some analysis and some reflections on this pretty crazy most recent weekend. If you're one of those top dog fans right now, or you're in a position of playoff seeding, if you're towards the bottom of the bracket, hopefully your team lost so you get a better draft pick or something, whatever like that. If you're looking more into the future, regardless of how you feel, we're here to give you the breakdown. Um, so why don't we just go and start off with our one that I would say is the biggest headline of the day, at least today during the work week. I mean, we the NFL is a constantly evolving drama that isn't confined to the weekends.
Yeah.
And today we found out that going into these last two weeks of the season, looks like Russell Wilson isn't going to be starting for the Denver Broncos. The story behind that is uh, Russell Wilson is essentially guaranteed around $40 million right now, cut and dry. Um, if he were to if he were to dip, essentially, he'd be getting that money. But if in the event that he doesn't pass a physical, um, I believe in the next year he would be owed $40 million by the Denver Broncos, which goes to show. Um, I mean, you could look at it from a place of you don't want him to get that money, and that's just like strictly the rationale to leaving him out. But I think what most analysts and people are in tune with the politics of the Denver Broncos are kind of seeing this as a um, essentially stating that the future for Russell Wilson with the Denver Broncos may not be an assurance. Um, do you think this would be a smart move for the Broncos to make, given the packages that they shelled out, Andy, or do you think people are making this out to be something that it isn't?
Um, so I don't, I mean, obviously, if it is medical information, the Broncos probably aren't going to release that right away.
Right.
Um, so as far as we know, it didn't appear that there was an injury, or anything like that on the field, at least. No headlines. It's kind of a confusing move. The Broncos are sitting at 12 in the AFC right now, but they are 7-8. Um, and with the Chiefs only at 9-6, I mean Kansas City, they can lose out and still, uh, I mean they'd be kind of on par with the Broncos if the Broncos won out. And then I believe the Broncos won. Did they win both of their games against the Chiefs this year, or
Um,
just one of them?
I think that they won. I think they won one
Okay,
against the Chiefs. I think they split.
okay. So with that, I don't understand the rationale behind being a. I get it's a tight conference right now. The AFC, there's four teams eliminated from the playoffs with only 2 weeks left to go. So that just doesn't really make any sense why in a world where you can win out, get a wild card seed, um, you would take out your starting quarterback who's gelled with the receivers, who's gelled with um the coaching staff, the offensive line, for a I believe it was who is the backup that they put in? I want to say Trevor
Jarrett
Simeon, but
Stidham.
he's on Jarrett Stidham,
Yeah.
who I I mean, I'm not familiar with his game. I haven't heard anything crazy he's done. I know Russ is not exactly what he was on the Seahawks, but I really don't understand this move. From a front office perspective, if you're trying to blow it all up, um, this is just bad. Uh,
Yeah.
If I was a Broncos fan, I'd probably be on a DEF CON 2 right now. I'm not freaking out fully, but there's a discussion that is being had with the front office. Um, Within that organization, I'm sure right now, and I really don't know who they would want. Would they draft? Would they try and go get someone? They've had too good of a record to get um, a high prospect quarterback out of this year's draft. So I'm just confused by the move. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. It's very weird.
It's a very strange decision to make. Of course, you're going to have Sean Payton coming out here saying, I mean, he quoted like basically explicitly that it was like a decision that he was making to win games. Like he said directly, I can tell you, look, we're desperately trying to win. Sure, in our game today, there are economics and all of those things, but the number one push behind all this is the decision I'm making to get a spark offensively. And look, I get that the loss, their most recent loss, it wasn't great. It's not a fun situation to be in the position where they're at, where uh, they kind of became like the pariah of the league as it related to bloated contracts. And then when you have
Yeah.
a situation where you lose that really awful game to the Patriots, naturally the fall guy is going to be Russell Wilson. It, I don't think that this should be necessarily be the case, though. I mean, the way that Russell Wilson, he has shown improvements. He has really developed a pretty outstanding connection um, with Cortland Sutton and really able to make these crazy throws that many of the quarterbacks, like with the quarterback play that we've seen over the course of this season, I don't know if I could say that he was outside the top 10, top 15.
Yeah.
I think that it's a really strange decision. Um, and I don't necessarily know if this means that Russell Wilson has played his last day um, in Denver. I mean, they could just be trying to avoid that cap hit and that bonus, but who knows? With that being said, enough on them. There are a number of conversations being had about potentially the league being shaken up in a number of ways, including coaching, including lower level coaching like coordinators and such. But one of the major shifters of the way that teams operate, of the face of many of these teams, is of course the quarterback. So Annie and I are going to go through these three quarterbacks that we think could potentially be in a situation where they're not playing for the team that they are currently playing on, and they could directly affect the legacy of whatever team they end up on. So let's begin with what I believe to be the most likely to be traded quarterback in the NFL, and that is Justin Fields. Um, you're in a situation where Justin Fields has showed a number of improvements, in my opinion, over the course of this season. He's been able to piece together um, a number of impressive offensive games, but I've been completely let down. If you're a listener to the podcast, you know that I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, and during our game, uh, what I got out of that was, of course, he's going to make some throws off balance. Of course, there are some plays that are going to be ugly. This was the year that he was supposed to take the leap, and obviously you want to see as many of those plays eliminated as possible. But he also gave the offense a dynamic nature to it that I think that a lot of these quarterbacks can't. Of course, he had injury issues. You had Beja in for, I think it was 3 or 4 games. Um,
Yeah.
but the result of that game kind of communicated to me that Justin Fields really isn't the issue. Do I blame the Bears franchise for going after someone maybe with a little bit more prospect potential? Maybe you can get someone who is as successful as CJ Stroud. No, but the odds of you getting someone like that is like 30%. And what you have with Justin Fields, in my opinion, is assuredness to improve, assuredness to at least be able to create in these dynamic ways. But nonetheless, the virtue of that trade is not something we're discussing. Where do you think is a good landing spot for Justin Fields? And do you think that this changes the way that they play do you think that this changes the way they play their game? How impactful of a move would this be?
So I think Justin Fields, in terms of the Bears, it doesn't really make a ton of sense. If they just kind of gave up on him like that. We've seen what he was able to do. And watching him in college, he reminds me a lot of Robert Griffin. RG3 in the terms that in college, you watch him and he will sit in the pocket and chuck it as far as he possibly can, and somebody will go run down there, catch the ball. He's got a great arm. He was a deep ball player at Ohio State, and he just hasn't been able to do that in the NFL. Now, I get the NFL is a different league. Um, but he reminds me of the sense of RG3 in the sense of that he's had to run for his life, basically. And um, as unfortunate of a situation as they both got in, I still think that um I think that the Redskins kind of gave up on RG3 a little too quick. I know he had some injuries, but he had tremendous upside, and I hope that that's not the case for Fields here because I don't want to see him out of the league. Now, I think Fields could be absolutely great on a team that has the system, if you will, in place. And so I know you're going to hate this, but I think I could see Justin Fields possibly being a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Yeah, I agree.
They have a great coaching staff. Canada is gone. Mike Tomlin has proven himself time and time again to be one of the best head coaches in the NFL and quite honestly in NFL history. What the culture he has been able to establish over there in Pittsburgh. Fields is an explosive player, and we've seen that. And they do have weapons. They have George Pickens. Now I know the offense isn't necessarily great, but that defense is amazing. And I think if you give a better quarterback, which I would consider Justin Fields a better player than Kenny Pickett, I think if you put him in that type of system and kind of give him the reins to an established community, an established organization like with Mike Tomlin, where the culture's there, the team's there, the coach is there, the system's there, and it's not this new system coming in and out like it has been for him with the Bears. I think that that's somewhere he could really, really thrive.
Yeah, Pittsburgh was like on my list as well. I think when you look at the assets that they have, and this is kind of the situation um, that Mike Tomlin has been plagued with, and or I guess that Steelers fans have been plagued with, is that Mike Tomlin hasn't had a losing season, and I think it's upwards in like the in the just below 10, and that leads you to a spot where you have a lot of the pieces that you need in order to have a successful team, but it's not. You don't have the playmaker to get you over the hump, and for so long, Steelers fans were convinced that it was Kenny Pickett, and or they were able to point the finger at bad coordinators, which is to be seen whether or not that was the right move to make. I mean, I think Matt Canada certainly wasn't the best option that you could have, but I think Justin Fields adding him to that roster would enable you to do many things. And potentially get you over that mediocre hump where although you're getting these winning seasons, you're really not making any deep playoff runs by any stretch of the imagination or making the playoffs rather. The Pittsburgh Steelers haven't won a playoff game in an incredibly long time.
Yeah.
So this would be a move that I think would be wise to make. I don't know what the price looks like to get a player like Justin Fields, but I think the Steelers have that within their budget. Another team that I thought would be a potentially decent landing spot for him is the Falcons. Um,
Yeah.
I don't. The issue for me though is I only want this happening because I'm a fan of Justin Fields. I of course I'm partial to him because like we're both Ohio State fans and we want to see him succeed. I don't want him anywhere near Arthur Smith. I want Arthur Smith to get fired, someone to come in and make a change, and then get Justin Fields, and then actually use some of the offensive weapons that you have. You have Bijan Robinson, you have Kyle Pitts, you have some decent options on receiver as well. You got some young talents in that of Drake London. There's no reason why you shouldn't have at least a competent offense. In my opinion, a clear upgrade over Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heinicke. Um, we're in a situation where Desmond Ridder is getting benched again, and although uh, he's a recent draft pick, and we've seen like it sucks that when you have an incident like that where you're gonna have to basically just trash all this development that you put into this player. I think if Atlanta actually has the courage to clean house, get rid of Arthur Smith, get rid of Desmond Ridder, or at least make him a backup, and bring someone like Justin Fields, and I think he gives you a lot of, uh, like I said, like a dynamic force that you're just absolutely not going to get with Taylor Heineke and and Ritter. It's just but again, I don't want him anywhere near Arthur Smith. He's going to screw this whole thing up. I don't want any of mad scientist antics getting in the way of his career. Um, I just think Atlanta is going to be the place where it ends up.
Yeah,
Um,
I could definitely
yeah,
see that also. That's a it's a big market. He's from Georgia, so
yeah, that's
that
also
could
a
definitely
component of
be
it.
a component where he says, "Hey, I'd like to go here," and they end up changing something. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so with this one, I think that this we can't. I don't know if we should speculate as much on it because I think we'll agree. What do you think they do with Kirk Cousins in Minnesota? Do you Are we looking at a re-signing, or are we looking at a position where he potentially gets shipped off uh to another team somewhere else in the league?
So Kirk is an interesting one because uh has he's been a very consistent quarterback. I'll say for the Vikings. Um, Now I'm not saying, he's a relative. I wouldn't say he's a great quarterback, but he's been consistent. He's been able to make the throws that they need him to make. He's been able to manage the game very well for them over the years. And so I think this is an interesting one because you have good young receiver talent there with Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. So I could see it. But if either of those guys want out, I don't think you re-sign Kirk because I think you get I guess I'll say franchise receiver like Justin Jefferson, who's out there making those plays. Having a veteran quarterback to help them is great. Um, and I think the same could be shown for if Minnesota wanted to bring in a younger guy. Um, Having a seasoned receiver that says, "Hey, put the ball here, read it like this," that can help them as well. So with Kirk, I think that there's a good chance that he resigns. Especially because he's been out about uh, 2/3 of the year now,
Hmm.
and they are still within playoff contention. Um, Actually, they're currently sitting at the eighth, so they are a game behind
Yeah.
the Rams and the Seahawks. The interesting thing about the NFC, I will say, is it's kind of sucks because the Cowboys have locked up a spot. So there's two spots, and there's one, two, three, four, five, six teams.
Competing
The
for those two.
Bears would be seven, but there's six teams competing for those two. So it is it's just a very interesting race as well as it is within the NFC or the AFC, I'm sorry. So having having the Vikings in there, I think that them not having a quarterback this year, um, kind of proves why they would want Kirk. They do well without him, um, well enough. So having him back, maybe they get two wins that they wouldn't have with a experienced quarterback. I'm willing to bet Kirk Cousins could have put down. They won against Vegas, but I'm willing to bet that wouldn't have been a nail biter for them that comes down to a last second field goal. He could have put some points on the board, just been able to lead the offense. So yeah, I think there's value in signing him. Um, Trade wise, I don't really see it happening.
Yeah, I don't either. I agree.
Simply, he's an older quarterback. Now he's had some injuries. Um, It just doesn't really make much sense for a team to trade him. I could see a rent a quarterback situation like the Colts had done for a couple years. If somebody wanted to try and do something like that, or maybe him be a mentor to a younger guy. But really, I think he'll end up back in Minnesota, and there's no real point for him not to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the odds of him trading are of him getting traded away are are so low, not just from a like a scheming perspective. I don't think that there's anybody who who is aspiring after Kirk Cousins in the way that the Vikings do. I also think like we could draw up an ideal situation where Kirk Cousins gets sent somewhere where maybe he schematically would fit better into the system. But when you think about the culture that they developed around him, it makes it appear that it's genuinely clear that they value him as a franchise quarterback and as an option and a leader for this team, in a way that a lot of quarterbacks struggle to or really struggle to put together and cultivate a culture around. Um, I mean, I had concerns earlier in the season that Justin Jefferson would would want to leave with Kirk being down, and really not having a future ahead of them. But somehow they found a way to, like you said, maintain within their position within playoff contention. And now Justin Jefferson is looking at injuries of his own. So although it's not an ideal situation necessarily for either of them, they're not on necessarily uh, deep running playoff teams. I think this is the best spot for him, and I think that with the culture that they've already built around them, not only would it be a lot of money to move him around in a massive cost that you're sinking by getting rid of Kirk, but there's also an emotional attachment to it that I think the Vikings aren't willing
Yeah.
to undertake, and I think that he's kind of the beating heart and the soul of the team, so it doesn't make sense to get rid of him. Um, Finally, I wanted to just go over Baker, who has been putting up electric numbers and who we're just about to talk about has essentially catapulted the Buccaneers into essentially winning their division. Um, do you think that he goes anywhere? And it, it, I think we're kind of in the same situation with as Kirk. And I'll just give you my take first.
Yeah.
I think that they don't let Baker walk. I don't think that there's really anyone else that you can get that they can get that would be more complementary to their team than Baker is right now per se. They found a good option and he's kept them rolling. I mean, I have experience with Baker and uh, he was a good quarterback until he got in his head. Of course, there were rumors that well, not even necessarily even rumors, he was playing injured, and that sort of created the result that it did, where you and I probably watched the game where he threw 5 interceptions, and I was like, all right, get this guy out of town.
You're right.
But he's been able to put things together, and in this season, it's been working. He's developed a incredibly solid connection with Mike Evans, which is something that you love to see if you're a Buccaneers fan. And I just don't think you let this guy walk.
Yeah, I agree. I think that did he sign a 1 year um
Yeah,
prove it deal? Okay.
I
And
believe
I
so.
think he proved it, and I think he
Yeah.
proved it to this front office that he wants to be there and he wants to win.
Hmm.
If I am the general manager and or owner of the Buccaneers, I'm gonna quite honestly, let's see how the end of the season shakes out. Um, I don't believe they've fully clinched their division yet, but it's somebody has to win it division. Um, so I think you sit them down and say, "Hey, listen, you want to do this? We'll throw some money at you." I say they extend him another 4 years and try and draft and get some talent around him and his style of play. Um, I think he's done a great job with what he has. I think everybody kind of wrote off the Buccaneers this year.
Yeah.
Um, or even if they were in a strong division, they're sitting at 8-7, so they would be in playoff contention regardless.
Hmm.
And they've looked good in the games we've seen. I mean, I saw Baker carve up the Packers defense. Uh, and it's one of those things. It's when you are in a position playing against Joe Barry, you need to take that opportunity to shine because you just have to because as many points get scored on us, the closer we are to getting rid of him, and that makes me happy.
Yeah.
So I think Baker did a good job. I don't think there's a team. I mean, at this point, he seems relatively happy, I'd say. He's
Yeah.
kind of playing like himself again,
Hmm.
which is great to see. and he's proving that he can be a starting quarterback in this league. Now, the Buccaneers, Brady, who they had, I mean, that's a fall off. That's a tough fall off. But to rebound and get a guy like Baker who can be in that mid range of starting quarterbacks in the league, that's good.
Hmm.
Mike Evans is a great receiver. Chris Godwin is a great receiver. Now you just got to fill in that roster with more and more talent. And they also another thing to consider with those guys is their core guys have won a Super Bowl. They have that experience. They won a Super Bowl at home, which is great too. So they have that experience. They have that culture. I think. I mean, it's Florida. I'm sure Baker loves the weather down there. Um, so yeah, I say Baker stays, and I think that kind of puts us into our next topic of conversation with the Buccaneers is they've looked like a legit playoff team. Now if everything shakes out how it is currently, I believe they play the Cowboys at home. So let's just say everything stands. Dallas goes into Tampa. That will be a fun game. Um, the Buccaneers, they kind of are one of those teams that's like, okay, what are you gonna get? But they can come out and throw a punch and hit you right in the mouth. Whereas the Cowboys, they have a lot of developed talent, um, and they're one of those big dog teams right now. But they've also suffered some brutal losses that you can't really turn away from and say, "Oh man, that didn't happen," because it did.
Yeah.
And they took some tough losses there, and yeah, I think that that would be a fun game to watch. I believe that they played last year actually. That was the Dan Bailey
Oh my gosh.
or
The
no,
all
not Dan Bailey. I'm sorry, Maher, Brett Maher. He
Yeah.
missed like 4 extra points or something like that, and it was just brutal. Yeah.
And then they drew up that awful play with Zeke at
Oh
center. Was
yeah.
that it or something?
Yeah. Well, I think that was the next game. That was when they played the 49ers
Oh
at
no, that
home.
was right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was the one
Yeah,
that they
because
lost.
they
Oh.
they ended up winning,
Yeah.
but man, it was a
And
tough
then you had
watch.
Jerry Jones. Yeah, Jerry Jones talking about needing a new kicker. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
I think that yeah, that was a stinker. I think that uh, like you said, the Buccaneers are vetted, and I think no one wants to play them. Like Braden and I have talked up their defense even on their bad days, um,
Yeah,
and I think that on both sides of the ball they're competent and they're frisky in a way that you certainly don't want to play them at home, and that's a situation that the Cowboys could be facing. Uh, Like you said, there are a number of incidences in which the Cowboys have lost, and not necessarily ugly ways. Of
bad
course,
losses though.
yeah, but
You
they were
know.
bad. You need to acknowledge that they were stinkers and they were taste that there were no moral victories in that. Like
Yeah,
you're not in a position, at least if you're Dallas, where you want those moral victories, and it's nothing. Moral victories aren't going to do any good in the playoffs. So I think that they're scary, and I wouldn't want to see them. But
yeah,
with
I
that
agree.
being said, um, I just want to go over and then what do you think? What do you think going into the playoffs because they're so close? Like you see personally as a sleeper threat, and then just real quickly, what do you think is a fraud? Or what team do you think is a fraud going, or who doesn't scare you if you were to go up against them? Not necessarily if you're the Packers because that's the team you're partial to, but just if you're any
Right.
franchise. One real quick, one sleeper and one fraud. Because I think that there are a couple teams you could draw from.
Yeah, so I think sleeper, a team that I don't want to play right now is your boys, the Cleveland Browns. They've been on one with a 38-year-old Joe Flacco. They kind of put the league on notice. And I only say sleeper because they're a 5 seed when they shouldn't be. I wish that they would realign how playoff seeding works just a little bit so that it is more about record than win your division. I'd love to see win your division and you're guaranteed to be in, but that might not reflect your seeding.
Hmm.
Um, I would hate to play the Browns in the playoffs with what they've been doing recently. NFC side, a sleeper. I think you can go with the Rams, possibly, or the
I fully
Bucks.
agree. Yeah.
The Rams, they've got talent. They've got a very seasoned veteran quarterback there. They've got young talent. They've got old talent. They've got a good coaching staff and a good culture established over there in LA. So I think they're a team you wouldn't want to see. And then fraudulent wise, fraud watch, I'm going, this one's rather easy. The dysfunctional Philadelphia Eagles. Um, I've personally experienced this a couple years where a team will go 13 and 3 like the Packers have done, but they might be the worst 13 and 3 team of all time and they absolutely blow it in the playoffs. Um the Eagles, man, they've looked rough these past couple weeks. Um they're not looking like a team that you see them in the playoffs and I understand they will have home field advantage. I just I don't really think that they're the team to beat in the NFC. I think that they can get upset. AFC, I'll switch it up. I'll go Jacksonville. They've got that 4 seed right now. Lawrence is dealing with some injuries. They just don't look like a team that's like, I wouldn't necessarily say fraudulent, because I don't know that anybody really expects them to
Yeah.
win much,
Right.
but they just don't look like a team that's gonna win much, come playoff wise. So yeah, those are my I guess 4 teams that I would say for that category.
Yeah. On really all of those, I fully agree. I wanted to talk about the Jaguars are my were my the fraud watch. I have fully punched the ticket on the Jaguars being frauds, and I'm talking a big game because my team is potentially going to face them in Duval.
Yeah.
Should the current playoff seeding continue to go on the way that's projected, which I think is great for Browns fans. With an underperforming defense and a quarterback who seemingly hasn't taken the leap that many expected him to be. I heard podcasts talking about how would you rather have Joe Burrow or Trevor Lawrence in 15 years, or sorry, like not necessarily 15, like in 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years.
This is a crazy dialogue. Like this is actually absolutely ridiculous discussion that's being had, and it's shown over the course of the season. And I just don't think that Trevor Lawrence, um, not that he's a bum or anything close to that, but I don't think
He's
that
not there yet. He's
no,
not
he's
there
not
yet.
there yet, and it's not enough to overcome some of the issues that are very clearly showing in
Yeah.
this on both sides of the ball in this Jags team. In terms of the fraud, the person I would kind of put on fraud watch in the in the NFC, I think I gotta agree with you. I think I'm gonna go with the Eagles. Even with the Cowboys putting up disappointing loss upon disappointing loss in 2 weeks in a row, I still believe in them and their capacity to make some sort of a run. Like they've been punched in the mouth a couple of times. It's kind of like a fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I'm going fool me 3 times. I think that genuinely think that the Cowboys can do at least a couple of things in the playoffs. This loss against this loss against the Dolphins was really ugly, and with Tony Pollard just kind of getting denied in a touchdown in that awful. I don't you I imagine you've seen it. Um, just he just had to extend his hand like it
Yeah.
that's it's just such a crappy situation to be in if you're Dallas. um but I don't know why I believe in them. I think that Dak should be like second in MVP consideration with the fall off of Purdy this week. um but yeah, I'm putting in those two as my frauds, and then in terms of sleepers and for the AFC, I can't do me because like that's I feel unfair. I'm staying away from Buffalo. Um, and I don't like the Dolphins either. You know what? I really don't like anyone who's like kind of underestimated except for us. So I'm gonna I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to lock in the Browns because all these other guys are like division leaders.
Right.
You had the Ravens who who had 4 interceptions against Purdy last night and then one on Darnold. And they look dominant. I have my questions. And then for someone in the South, I'm with you. I think I'm gonna go with the Bucks, man. They're solid, and I mean the Saints are still in a position where I think like if
They're
if
within striking
they're
distance
within
still,
striking
but
distance, but
They're
like
not a threat.
if there
They're
was
not a
anything,
playoff threat.
if the roles were swapped and the Saints were in the position the Buccaneers were, I would punch my ticket on them being frauds as well.
Yeah,
So I don't feel those are the teams that I think we can at least agree uh maybe aren't getting as much media attention, but they have something under the hood that I think we should be scared about.
yeah.
So with that, let's move on to the next one. Let's talk about the Chiefs and an incredibly embarrassing loss to the Raiders. We saw a really ugly display, not only by Patrick Mahomes, but also members of and really the entire Chiefs uh, coaching team, defense, and offense. I mean, you had Aiden O'Connell who didn't complete a pass in the sorry, a pass past the first quarter, and they still found a way to win that game. How does this happen, Andy?
It happens when you get too far ahead of yourself, which is what I think the Chiefs have done, and I think it's shown. This might be one of the worst looking Super Bowl defending teams out there.
Hmm.
Um, I understand the receiving issues, but you have this great generational, um, could save every person from a burning building, according to Chris Collinsworth, quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. And he just kind of hasn't looked like himself. It's really weird. And I know that, uh, they didn't have Hill last year and they won a Super Bowl and they just look bad. This is not a team I'd be scared to play. And I think that honestly, right now where we're sitting, we might be seeing the end of this Chiefs run that they've had here. Um, it's a little sad to be honest. In terms of legacy, um, Kelsey's in his mid 30s. Mahomes has got plenty of time left. I'm not worried about
Yeah.
him, but um just the rate at which we have seen this team kind of decline to where they were this big dog that everybody was like, "Oh no," to now where they're not, you know, seeing them win, I'll say.
Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's just you said it's sad, and I don't know if I've ever felt that way about like I what I would consider be a dynasty adjacent team in any of my sports opinions for a really long time. Of course you had the Patriots who I like despised Tom Brady and everything associated with him for a really long time. Um, and then once he got to the Bucks, I started becoming more of a fan. Um, but it's like and then of course you have Golden State, who, uh, being two Ohio guys, it's the arch
We
nemesis
just hate
of the
them.
Cleveland Cavaliers. Yeah,
We
you have
hate them.
no love for them whatsoever.
Please don't be a
Yeah,
Golden State
don't bring
fan.
that around me. With that being said, I feel like the Chiefs have fully evaded this toxicity or like this vitriol that you get from being like a dynasty adjacent team. Um, they've won a number of Super Bowls in recent years. I mean, they got one Super Bowl surprisingly out of Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and Patrick Mahomes on the same team,
Yeah, that's
which is crazy. But
they
uh,
only got one.
yeah, I feel like they've avoided much of this criticism, and it's weirdly starting to crop up now that they're kind of on the waning period of their success. And with with Travis Kelce going down, I've been talking about it over the course of a couple of weeks. Like he's not himself. He's not getting the separation in a way that he used to, and he's just lost some. It's his age is starting to show. Um, it's I listen to the Bill Simmons podcast a lot just because I appreciate his insight. And I think he's funny. But he mentioned how this like reminds me of like the waning Brady years, at least in New England, where it's just like just some of the sparks are still there, but there's just not enough, and um, the cracks are really starting to show in a way that previously you would have been able to write off. At this point, I think it's just gone too far. And when you have wide receivers who are lauded for their incapabilities and a and really a lack of playmakers past Patrick Mahomes. And I guess Isaac Pacheco you can throw in there. Um, you're kind of beginning to you're seeing the twilight of this dynasty, and I think it's a really hard thing to see if you're a Chiefs fan. Um, but the bottom line is you still have Patrick Mahomes, and I do believe that going forward, like this isn't a situation where we're going to see this team fully cave in on itself. Um, they'll be able to find a way to make things work. But with this current roster, there's going to need to be some changes. Um, man, you got to find somebody. The thing about like the thing about the Patriots is like at least they had some receiving talent. Like at least they had Gronk. Like you had Moss in there for a portion, and it's like
Yeah.
there genuinely doesn't seem to be anybody at this point. It's so at least it's showing up now. But if even I would not be scared to play this team in Arrowhead. Uh,
Yeah.
with the level of incompetency that they've shown. So, do you have anything else to say on them?
Yeah, one last thing kind of to wrap it up is don't press the panic button, Kansas City. You have a generational quarterback.
Right.
Now I know I joke around with how much everybody glazes him, but he is a very, very good football player. I don't think that there's anybody who's looking at Patrick Mahomes and saying, no, he's mediocre. No, he is a great football player. He is a Super Bowl winning quarterback. He's an MVP winning quarterback, and he's still in his prime. Now, here's what I do. If I'm Kansas City, I say, hey, we got this really, really good guy. What superstar receiver do we lure in here? Do we get a Justin Jefferson? Let's make it a little bit unfair. I know you spent big on Mahomes. You have a good defense still. I truly
Yeah,
think that the Chiefs do have a good defense.
that's the craziest
Um,
component of it is they have it like one of their best defenses that they've seen
yeah,
over the course of their success.
they have
But
a great defensive
yeah,
coordinator, but I really, and I think that their offensive line has been solid. Now they had that one guy, their right tackle, I forget his name, but he was lining up like in the backfield basically to start the season. I don't know if that's cleared up much.
yeah,
That was just goofy. Um, but but they have a good defense. Um, it's really the receivers though. Um,
you're talking about Jawan Taylor.
yeah, Jawan
Yeah,
Taylor. Kelsey is at a point now where next season is going to be a very proving season for him to see if he can continue to play at that high caliber best tight end in the league um rate at which he was going. But I think in this offseason, you flat out say you put a help wanted ad out on NFL.com and say, hey, we need a Pro Bowl caliber receiver. We got some cash. Who wants to win a Super Bowl? They get a Pro Bowl caliber and a Cortland Sutton uh esque guy, two guys like that, they're right back to where they were.
yeah. And you know what would suck is at least for Bengals fans is that you got T Higgins who I think is about to get dumped and
Yeah,
who reasonably could end up in KC,
right,
and he would be their best receiver by about 13 trillion miles. And then you
right.
have Rasheed Rice, who
Is good.
isn't
He's a
competent
rookie, but
enough
he's
just
good.
yet, but he could be really good. And I mean,
Right.
he's already showing flashes in a way that Sky Moore didn't. Um, he's had a number of touchdowns, and he's like, I don't know, just we're talking in fantasy, but he's up there. Like he's one of the better 32 wide receivers in the league. And if you get someone like T. Higgins on it who can give him time to develop and maybe opening up the receiving game so you're having these longer extended drives, heck, man, that can really open it up. And I think that you got some
Yeah,
really good free agents who you can go after in this offseason.
right.
Um, so yeah,
I think that T. Higgins, Cortland Sutton. I don't believe Cortland Sutton's a free agent. He was just kind of a benchmark. I think he and T. Higgins are in a similar category of wide receiver, where they're both very good, but I wouldn't put them in that elite category yet.
hmm
You try and get two of those guys, or maybe one of those
or even
guys
one. Yeah,
in an elite level receiver. I think you're right back to where you were last year in playing for that title.
yeah, I completely agree, and I think that It's something that should be fully within play. Uh, Shed some of those assets, man. Like
Yeah.
they're what you have right now is worth it.
Go win now. That's
Yeah,
that's what I'd
yeah,
say to the Chiefs. Go win now.
yeah.
You still have
And
the
next year,
pieces.
because that's what you can
Right.
do.
You still have the pieces. I think players in the NFL, at a certain point, they care a lot more about winning than they do money. And I think the Chiefs have a good culture there where they want to win.
They got great
Um,
coaching.
they got
Yeah,
great coaching. Enemy has been a hit that people didn't necessarily expect. But I think yeah, even they could go trade. They could do something like that.
hmm
Get a T Higgins and a trade for a Terry McLaurin or someone like that.
that would be
That's
so scary.
that's disgusting. You
Yeah,
give
yeah,
Mahomes two guys like that, that is actually disgusting.
yeah.
Um, but speaking of teams that wear red and have been in recent Super Bowls and are contending again, we got the 49ers and the end of the MV Purdy conversation, as many NFL fans are um, talking about. The first thing I'd like to take away from this game is who is beating the Ravens.
Yeah.
They look good. Now, we saw a couple years ago that they had the one seed. They played and lost to Tennessee at home. I think that this is a different team. This is a different Lamar Jackson. He's a seasoned veteran at this point. He's putting up MVP numbers once again. And all the old people who say, well, he ain't a quarterback, he ain't throwing.
Yeah.
Look what he's doing. He is standing in the pocket and chucking it with accuracy down the field. He's running when he has to. Is he still a great runner? Yes, of course. But the culture that they have there, the quarterback that they have there, they're personally the team that I've watched that has the least amount of holes, that looks the most solid. That's why they're my pick for the Super Bowl. Um, but Brock Purdy, I think a couple of those interceptions were not necessarily his fault.
I put
There was
two of them on
one,
them.
I put two of them on him. Um, you know, he played against a very good defense. Um, I mean, batted the one to Kittle, you might be able to put on him. Um, but it's one of those things. Now, here's the issue. Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, uh, Rodgers, let's say even maybe a Josh Allen. Mahomes for sure. They throw four interceptions and everybody's going, tough game.
Yeah.
Sucks. You'll bounce back. Everybody, for some reason, wants to de-head Brock Purdy. Um, and I don't know where really this has come from. Yes, his numbers are great. Do I think he is an elite NFL quarterback? No, but he's a good quarterback. He's made the reads and throws that he needs to make for the most part. Yeah. Did he have a bad game? Yeah, of course. Tom Brady has had bad games where he's thrown three interceptions in playoff games, and he's still the greatest quarterback of all time. So to say that Brock Purdy is a bust, I don't think anybody's saying that because he was the last pick.
Yeah, our last
But
pick.
to say, but to say that this guy's a wash or you know he's not doing anything. I think you could drop him in an NFL offense and he would be, I'd say, maybe a little bit above a Tannehill level or around that type of player where, we're not seeing, oh, this guy's Aaron Rodgers, but we're also not seeing this guy's Jamarcus Russell. Don't write off Purdy. I know the Niners fans I've seen on Instagram and stuff, they seem to love this guy. Um, think that you continue to move forward with him. You have the offense there. You can't blame Purdy for the offense that he's in. That's something else I'd like to say is everybody seems to be making it like this dude really chose like, oh, I'm gonna go to this team and be mediocre. No, he's got them at the one seed. They've clinched home field advantage, and they're looking good. They suffered a really bad loss. They still have a very good team. I think Brock Purdy is a good quarterback. Let's remember this. It was a few short years ago that Jimmy Garoppolo was the starting quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, and they almost won a Super Bowl. That is a testament to Kyle Shanahan's system. However, Jimmy Garoppolo is a meh quarterback. I think that we can both agree after seeing him play for the Raiders. I think Purdy has more upside. He's younger, but I don't think that he ever should have been MVP. Most valuable player should not be the guy who is just running a system. Um, Seen a lot of people calling him a game manager. I don't think that that's a bad thing. If you're play for the 49ers, why would you want something besides a game manager? There's no real need for anything other than that with that high powered offense that you have. You need somebody to excel and not just be a game manager when you have a Chiefs situation where you don't really have weapons. Mahomes has to go do crazy stuff just to get wins. Um, but yeah, it- the 49ers are still a good team. I don't know really who the team to beat in the NFC is. Everybody has their holes right now. There's no real big dog division leader that I'm seeing, but I think it'll be fun. I think Purdy should be given a shot to be a franchise quarterback there, but he had one really bad, he had a stinker. You got to move past and keep playing. We'll see how he does this next week.
Yeah, you have stinkers, and I in essence completely agree with what you're saying. The thing about Brock Purdy is the numbers he puts up, they're real, and I don't know if anyone else in his situation. I don't know if Zach Wilson's putting up those numbers. I don't even know if Tannehill's putting up those numbers. Like
Yeah,
I think it's a possibility that Tannehill. I don't know if Sam Howell is putting up those numbers. I don't know if, like, granted, in terms of just ranking QBs, like he's probably not top 15. You could probably find 15 people better than Brock Purdy. But in terms of most valuable player, I wouldn't be too mad if he ended up in the. I wouldn't be too mad if he ended up being in like the top five, just with the way that he has been able to steer this team. And
right.
we had Braden and I had discussed this before that I thought it should have gone to Dak. At that point in the time, I thought it should have gone to Dak over Purdy because that was kind of the two people vying for it. Um, at this point, I think you got to give it to Lamar. Um,
Yeah,
but but I don't like seeing Brock Purdy disrespect on my timeline. I don't like seeing Brock Purdy disrespect coming out of people's mouths. I think he was dealt a situation that was optimal for him and his growth and him as a rookie, but there to devalue his work, his talent, and the level of success that he's achieved just by limiting to a system quarterback. I think the label is not deserved, and I think that I think the label isn't deserved. And I guess the question is, what do you want him to be? Because in this
yeah,
roster that's stacked with incredible players, do you really want him taking the ball away from? Do you really want a Lamar Jackson-esque player who is producing in a way that only he can, and maybe not in the season prior to this, maybe not relying as much uh on the other members of his offense in order to make plays work? That, in my opinion, that spoke to the weakness of the Ravens offense, and we touted the Ravens up to being successful because of Lamar, and like, yeah, that's great, and I actually think that that's an accurate assessment of the Ravens team. But why are you blaming Brock Purdy for the success of the people around him? He's
right.
facilitating and he's getting the job done. Um, to say he's the most valuable player may be a stretch, but I think that he
I
deserves
think
some
it is.
flowers, and I think that he should be within. I think that he should be within like the top five.
Yeah.
Um,
And Purdy's one of those guys. He goes to the Pro Bowl this year. I'm saying, okay, it's warranted.
yeah,
If he won the MVP over a player like Lamar, that would be what's going on. This is a little weird.
yeah.
He just doesn't. And also, it's an eye test thing, and it's just he doesn't feel like a MVP caliber quarterback. Not to say that he can't get there, but you look at him, and I look at other players who are kind of. I'd compare him to maybe like a Kirk Cousins,
Hmm.
where he will be a good franchise quarterback. But he's not a guy that's that's going out and being Rodgers or Brady or Manning or someone like that. But he is definitely a talented player, and I think that he's got a lot of upside, and he could prove us all wrong and become the next Tom Brady. We'll just have to wait and see. It's only his second year in the league.
You're very true. You're very it's true that it could develop. Um, with that being said, now that we're done, that finishes our highlight. So let's head over into the future and what's about to occur. In our first game of the week, and that is of course my Cleveland Browns against the Jets at home, prime time.
Thursday night.
Super excited about this. This is our first prime time game of the season, which I think is unfair, but I'm not going to be that's I'm not even going to deliver a stump speech. Um, in my opinion, uh, I think we win this game. Uh, I think it's Trevor Siemian that will be taking snaps
It
for
doesn't
this
matter.
team. Yeah,
It doesn't matter.
yeah. It doesn't matter. I think genuinely that we're the better team, and what I'm looking for is a dominant Cleveland Browns performance. We saw that a little bit in the Texans game. Granted, there was
Mhm.
no CJ Stroud. Like it would have been great to, but what I'm looking for as a Cleveland Browns fan is to beat this team and slam the door shut early because that's the thing we
Yeah,
struggled with the entire season. We find ways to let them back in the game. Like even in the Texans game, we let Damian Pierce go for a kick return touchdown that ended up injuring our kicker. Like
right.
while we end like that play in and of itself is the definition of this Cleveland Brown season. Is you are up two TDs, you're up 14 points, you kick the ball, they do a kick return touchdown, and inextricably like two people get injured who are incredibly integral into the success of your team, but you somehow end up winning it by a considerable margin, or like not even by a considerable margin because that's a very rare occurrence for this team. But somehow you end up winning this game, and now you have more injury issues, and like that play in its oneness is a great example of this entire season. And I want that narrative to change. I want this game to be over with quickly. I want to be tucked in my bed in my pajamas watching this at 10 o'clock and just marveling at the 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 future that this team can have into the playoffs. And if that doesn't happen, I'm going to be upset. I'm going to be worried because we got a divisional game next week. It's just, and granted, if we win this game, we're going to the playoffs. Like we clinch it, but it's like you don't want to lose that last game and end on a sour note. But I think we win this game, and I hope my hope is that the narrative changes, because that's like the last boost you need in order going into the playoffs for me to feel confident in this team.
Yeah, I got the Browns in this one. Really just I think it's simple. They've been looking really good. They're at home. They want to get into the playoffs and most likely rest Joe
Hmm.
the last week. So I think that I mean they're at home. I think they win this one. It's prime time. Their defense is one of the best in the league. The Jets offense has struggled. Uh, the fact that we don't know who's starting at quarterback kind of tells us all we need to know about the touchdowns. Saturday we'll have a game. The Lions at the Cowboys. Real quick on this one. I think this is going to be a fun one. I think this is two teams that they've still got a little bit left to prove, especially there for the Cowboys after suffering some tough losses. But they're back home at Jerry World. Um, I think that they win this one. I'm gonna go Cowboys here. I think Dak is a better quarterback than Jared Goff. Um, Now this is one that is like, oh no, if the Lions win, I'm not gonna be totally shocked.
Right.
But I think that the Cowboys need this
I
one as a
completely agree.
confidence booster that says, hey, we can beat a legit playoff division winning team, which they've shown when they beat the Eagles. Um, so I think the Cowboys will take this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is a game that the Cowboys need, and what I'm looking for is a return to the mean for this Cowboys defense because they haven't been as productive recently, and I think that this is a good game for them to for course correction. You have Jared Goff coming into town at home. The Green Bay Packers were able to get him fumbling 3 or 4 times or something like that. When Goff gets frazzled, I think that you can take advantage of that, and I really do think that it inhibits their offense. This is not a defense that they want to go against. And I think that if Micah Parsons gets home early, that this will be a game that the Cowboys are able to handle. And I think that they know this is just something that they need. This is the prime time to get it done. And I think they know that. I also just believe in this offense. I'll say it again. I think that Dak CeeDee Lamb connection is
Very
probably
good.
is probably top three, top four, uh,
Yeah.
at this point. Um, an object of concern is the rushing. Tony Pollard is not as good as Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I don't know it like I think I would almost have Jahmyr Gibbs over Tony Pollard at this point as a rookie.
Yeah.
I think Cowboys fans are in the same. I don't think that they're really ready to give the keys to the kingdom away to Tony Pollard just yet, and I don't think that he's proven himself to be fully reliable. And I think that that's something that if they're gonna lose, that's gonna be a big component of it. But nonetheless, I'm confident in the Cowboys.
Yeah, I agree.
Moving on, we have an uh interesting divisional game against the Titans Texans after the Case Keenum Texans led a strong overtime win against the Titans. Um, you're looking at it at Houston, and CJ Stroud should be making his return. I really do think that the Texans do win this game. Will Levis hasn't been as productive, and I think isn't there a possible I've heard whispers of of injury. Um,
Yeah, Tannehill played last week.
yeah,
So I really don't know. Is Stroud out still?
we're not certain as to if Stroud will be playing, but I anticipate that he will be. Um,
Yeah.
it
Either way, I think I'm rolling Houston at home for
yeah.
this one. It just seems like a game that they can win. Tennessee, they've had a weird season for sure.
Hmm.
I think Will Levis is showing great strides of improvement, and he's looking really good. And I think that that's something that they have uh, are able to look forward to as a franchise, quite honestly. And I'm glad for him for it.
Yeah, I am as well, and I do think that the Texans put this game away. Um, personally, I hope that they do it just so CJ Stroud can secure that offensive rookie of the year
Yeah,
award if he hasn't already. So hopefully he can secure that. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, putting my money on the Texans this week.
I agree.
Moving on, we have the Falcons and the Bears, in which is a interesting game for the Falcons. The Bears are sitting at about a 1% chance of making the playoffs at this point, so I think that this situation is likely not as important for him. But you have the Falcons coming to the Bears. Um, I think the Bears are going to put this one away. I don't know how the the Colts managed to let the Falcons score 29 points on them uh, last week, but it happened, and I'm still trying to get over it. I don't think this happens with Montez Sweat though. Um, when we've seen that, I kind of anticipated that maybe the stats are being a little bit inflated with Montez coming in and basically completely revitalizing their defense, but he has. I've seen it. I have beholded the truth, and I think that that was a great move. That was actually a great move for them to make, and he should be an integral part of this defense going forward into the next season. And I think it's enough to throw off Taylor Heineke. I think that basically up and down this team, they have better weapons other than maybe wide receiver. And then running back. I think that the Bears have a more dynamic and impactful defense. And I trust Justin Fields way more than any of the options that they have on the roster. And who knows, maybe he could be playing this. He could be playing his next team right now, and he's going to try and show off.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is an important one for Chicago. If they have any glimpse of playoff hopes, they come to our house next week. They play in Lambeau last week of the season. The Packers are not going to want to give that one up. especially as we are making our own push towards the playoffs. Um, Atlanta is just a team they're weird, dude. They're so weird because like they're somehow, I feel like their record is better than they are.
Hmm.
Um, they do play in a weak division, but I would still just their record's better than they are. They don't have consistency at quarterback, and that's something you need in this league. I honestly think that the Bears will win this game, and try and make that last ditch effort to push towards the playoffs here. Um, I've got New England at Buffalo here, it looks like, and um, again, just a 1 o'clock nooner game. Well, if you're in Central Time. Um, but this one's kind of a snoozer, I feel like. The Patriots are weird yet annoying because they keep showing up on red zone, and I have to watch Bailey Zappi or Mac Jones play quarterback, and that's not very fun, or entertaining. The Bills are making a playoff push. The Bills, for the first time, have actually had to, it seems like they've actually had to fight to make the playoffs this year. So I think that they're not going to take this one lightly at all. It's a divisional game and they need that win. I think they're going to go out, beat them by a couple touchdowns in this one.
You see, this is where I think I disagree. I have this strange feeling about the Patriots, and I felt this way in the game against the Broncos, and I feel this game against the Bills. It's in division. I don't like it. I have my concerns about Josh Allen and how much he turns the ball over. It seems to me that Bill Belichick is he's kind of pieced something together, and I don't know. Bailey Zappi, you saw him in last week getting them in field and putting them in basically on a game-winning drive in order to beat the Broncos, which is essentially completely unraveled their season. I don't like this game. If I'm Buffalo, I do think that they win, but I think it's actually going to be a nail biter. I think it's going to be pretty close, and I wouldn't be surprised if you told me in just under a week that the Patriots essentially ruined the Bills' playoffs aspirations with this game. I actually wouldn't be that surprised. Moving on, the next game I have here are Dolphins Ravens. And Dolphins Ravens is an incredibly interesting game of the week. Um, sorry, game of the weekend. And I'm kind of split on this one. I don't know. I'm partial to picking the Dolphins because I really want to see the Ravens fall flat on their face, just so there's a chance that we win the North. But I don't think that that's going to be the case. Baltimore rarely loses at home, and I think that when you've seen some of the injuries that the Dolphins have had in their offensive line, most notably they lost their center. I really think that this defense is going to be able to take advantage of that. Uh, how they stopped a PJ Walker led Cleveland, how they didn't stop a PJ Walker led Cleveland Browns offense. I don't understand, but I think they're going to be able to stop Tua and Tyreek is always an issue. Um, so I think that they're going to be able to get points on the board, but I also just trust Lamar. Um, to make things work. And I think despite this being like a pretty a game where the Ravens defense plays well, I think this will be in the upper 20s. And I think the Ravens will win.
Yeah, I think this is a need to win for Miami, but I don't think they win. I think the Ravens are a better team. We saw that Miami got their first win against a positive record opponent last season in Dallas.
Mhm.
Or last week, I'm sorry, against Dallas. I don't think they win here. I think this is one that they need to win to kind of prove to themselves maybe that they can beat a good team. But you're going into Baltimore, um, tough place to play. Baltimore has a real home field advantage there. Lamar has been looking like an MVP. They are not going to. I mean, this is a battle tested team. They just mollywopped San Francisco, who's the number one seed in the NFC. So I got the Ravens just simply out of. I think they're going to outmuscle them in the end of the game. And overall, that they're a better team, and they have now two is a good maybe even great quarterback, but Lamar Jackson's better. Um, and I think he's going to prove that, and he's going to make a real MVP case on Sunday.
I also think that um, what's important about this game is that um, losing to losing to Miami would, or sorry, losing to Baltimore would effectively make them forfeit their one seed spot, which would remove the option of a bye week. So it's going to be really important that they win this game for their playoff
Yeah.
aspirations. But I like you said, I don't see it happening. All right, moving on to our next game, we have Saints versus the Buccaneers in a game that is really important for NFC South playoff seeding. Uh, do we need to talk about this much? I think we both have a really high opinion about the Buccaneers. Granted, this is
Yeah.
going to be a really tough game, really hotly contested, but the Saints have been potentially uh not fraudulent, but I would classify them as the most fluky of the entire team, whether or not you bet on their success or their failure, their flukes. Um, and I actually do see the Buccaneers winning this game. And I see an inefficient Derek Goff this game, and I despite the Saints defense being pretty solid, I think Baker will be able to put up some impressive numbers as well. One impressive aspect of this team that I think has taken the leap is Rashad White. He's been able to really expand Baker's, giving him another target, and a really good receiving back that's been able to move the ball down the field and extend those drives in a way that they hadn't been able to do at the start of the season. It was pretty rough. It was pretty rough go, but to see him kind of take a leap and it really subsequently the team taking a leap as well has been great to see for the Buccaneers. And I think they're going to be able to put this game away and basically secure their division.
Yeah, I agree. I think we both did come into this one with hot Buccaneers, and I really think that they can prove us right here. I hope they do, so we don't look like a bunch of morons. But um, yeah, I think Baker and this team they want to be in the playoffs. They want to show that they're committed to winning. Um, and they're scrappy.
Mhm.
I like them. I think they have a good defense. They really do have a high level defense. And the offense is getting there. Um, so the Saints are one of those teams similar to the Falcons where I just think their record is a little bit better than they are, which is not saying much because they're 7-8. Um, so I just say. I say Bucks here. New Orleans just they don't have that umph to them that the other playoff caliber teams do, where there's like, oh, what about this guy? They have Kamara kinda. He hasn't been his normal self, like we've seen in previous seasons. Um, so yeah, I will roll Tampa Bay here. Um, let's see. We've got uh, the Las Vegas Raiders versus the Indianapolis Colts. Um, let me see. What are the Raiders at? I think they're 7-8 also. Yeah, 7-8. Um, so I'm gonna roll with the Colts here. Um, they're at home. I think that the Colts they they kind of have to win um to be in the playoffs. If they want to be in the playoffs, I'm surprised of how good they're doing just with Minshew at quarterback. Not that he's a bad quarterback by any means, but this is not the guy that they thought they would have, and so they've been able to adapt to him and how he's playing. And so I just think that they're in a good position. The Raiders are kind of one of those teams that they're kind of fun and they're kind of scary. I believe Antonio Pierce is the name of their interim head
Mhm.
coach
Yeah.
currently. I think, you can just the vibe I get from that Raiders team watching them is that they love this guy.
Mhm.
And from seeing his press conferences, he seems like a great dude. He seems like he loves to be around the players and he wants to be there. So I think that they honestly they will have him be the head coach moving forward. With the success that he's been able to bring to the Raiders recently. But with that being said, I do think that the Colts win and they kind of solidify themselves as a playoff team in this one.
Yeah, I think that it's really hard because I actually I see this game as a really decisive game for the Raiders as well. I mean, you had an awful start to the season,
Yeah,
just with McDaniels, and then like you said, Antonio Pierce has been able to completely turn it around. I actually think that the Raiders will be able to get this going. I think that they'll be able to get the win. And
yeah,
I think it's actually more important that they win this game than the Colts lose this game. If the Colts could still manage to lose one and then potentially even win their division, it's they have a tough game against the Texans in the end. So I'm sure they really want to get this under their belt. But I'm sure the game that at least the coaching staff has circled the most is that Texans game in the following week, because that's going to have uh, a crazy amount of playoff implications.
yeah,
I just think that uh, the defense has kind of taken a step back in the Colts, which is kind of depressing for me because they looked incredibly solid there at the start of the season, despite people returning from injuries. Uh, they haven't been able to perform in the way that they had prior. Um, and I think that this Raiders team is on a roll. Um, Granted, that wasn't a super sexy win over the Chiefs, but they got it done. I just trust them to ride the momentum. But either way, I would believe you as if you were to say the way that this game ended up turning out.
yeah.
Um,
It
yeah,
should be a fun one. It's honestly one of those coin toss games here.
yeah, absolutely. The next one I have for me is Cardinals, Eagles, which is should be a game where the Eagles put it away. Um,
Yeah, I
yep,
don't think there's much to talk about on this one.
no,
I think it should be just an Eagles
I completely
kind of
agree.
trump them out there.
The more impressing, I guess, no, I guess the more, how can I say this? The bigger picture that we should be looking at in this game is, are the Eagles able to put anything together? If they struggle doing this
Yeah.
game, there should be no hope of them making a deep playoff run. Like that's just the
Yeah,
truth.
this is kind of a game they need. It's at home. It's a rebound game.
Yeah.
Just go out there, thump them, get the win. Uh, you know, have a good New Year.
Yeah. All right. Um, the next one I have, and I'm glad we were able to just get through that one because that one was pretty awful. We got Panthers Jags, which I actually don't think will be that awful. I think that this is the game worth watching. Um, this is not a good team in that of Carolina.
No.
Unfortunately that's the truth. You're sitting at 2-13. You were nearly able to get a win against the Packers, but that level of mismanagement is just sort of baked into Carolina at this point. But you know who also is showing an incredible level of mismanagement? Jacksonville Jaguars. If they don't win this game, we will potentially be the most validated individuals on the entirety of the internet. I'm sure there are other people who are saying this as well. I do think though that the Jaguars will win this game. Like as mismanaged that they are, there's a complete level of incompetency over there in Carolina, and if you lose to that team, we need to start having conversations about your future. And if Doug Peterson loses this game, I think that this is genuinely the game that would cost him his job. So I guess he's going to be coaching with fire under his seat. But I I I think that the Jaguars can get it done, but I'm not super confident about it.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's kind of like my Colts take, where for some reason I just feel like it could be an upset. I remember watching a couple years ago, the Bengals had like two wins and they went in. I forget if it was the Browns or the Steelers that they played in the last game of the season, and they absolutely throttled them. Um, And so Carolina has absolutely nothing to lose, which is scary.
Yeah.
Um, and the Jaguars are one of those teams that's kind of like, hey, what is going on around here?
hmm
Like we said, they're not really a threat for the playoffs, but I think that they have to win this one because if they lose to Carolina, everybody's gonna laugh at them,
Yeah.
is what's gonna happen. Um, every single team that has a possibility of playing the Jags in the playoffs is going to be saying they don't got anything. They're not doing anything. They lost to flipping the Panthers.
Yeah.
So I'm not really worried if I'm a Panthers fan because it's the fun part where it's like, hey, let's try and go get a win. We stink. Jaguars fans will be in the seat that I was last week, where it's like, oh my gosh, please do not lose to this team. Um, I don't think they will. I think it's going to be close. Um, because I haven't given up fully on Bryce Young, I'll say, rather than the Panthers, maybe. But yeah, I think Jacksonville wins in a game that is closer than it should be, kind of like last week. And then another game that I have that we have yet to go over. I think we have two left in our 1 o'clock slate. Um, and that is the Giants and Rams in New York. The Rams are kind of hot right now. I was kind of a little bit high on them earlier in this episode, and I just think that they win this one. The
Agree.
Giants have had a lot of inconsistency this year. DeVito played a hell of a game against the Packers. I'll give him that. But getting benched, unfortunately for Taylor. The weirdest thing is both of those guys look better than Jones did earlier in the season.
Yeah, it's so hard.
Uh,
Oh,
um, so yeah, I think that the Rams go in and take care of business. They know that they need this, and they're gonna get used to playing on the road because that's where they will be when playoff times come. And I do think that they win this, and they will be in the playoffs this year.
yeah. All right. I completely agree. I think that the Rams, I've been high on the Rams for this whole season, and I think that this is where they really put it away. It's important to them that uh like if you're going to be a playoff team, you need to get a win against a team that has been feisty. But I think that this is this is where it stops for the Giants if the Rams are who they say they are. I think that they know that they have to say that, and I think that they're going to put them away. I think the Rams will win this one out.
Yeah.
The next one that I have is Niners versus Commanders, and I don't even know if we need to think about this. Like, I don't know who they have playing DB for the Niners, but uh, dude, I feel bad for whoever has to guard Debo, man. That is going to be a miserable game. You also throw in Ayuk, and then Christian McCaffrey is going to, I think, throw them in the meat grinder. I think that they could beat them by 30 points.
Yeah, this is one that Purdy's going to come out here and he's going to just look through every possession and kind of get his bearings straight again
Hmm.
after being, it's almost like when you flip a compass around a couple times and you got to hold it level so it can reset. I
Hmm.
think that's what Purdy has to do with this game. Um, the Commanders are not a great team. You're on the road. I mean, it's probably going to be crappy weather. This is football weather, though. The Commanders are going to be gunning for you. They saw a weakness. They're going to be gunning for it. I don't think they're good enough to fully exploit that weakness. So I got the Niners. I think that they could probably run the ball most of the game and win. Um, so yeah, I roll the San Francisco 49ers, and they just continue to solidify that one seed over in the NFC. And then it looks like we got three 4 o'clock games this week. The first of these is Pittsburgh at Seattle. Um, and I'm just gonna roll off here. I got the Seahawks. Especially if they wear their throwback uniforms, but I got the Seahawks. I know that you love them.
Yeah.
I don't I don't know. I believe Mason Rudolph started
Yeah.
um, the previous week, Pittsburgh, they've got a very good defense, but Seattle has a real home field advantage. Um, I don't think the Steelers go into Seattle and win this one. It's kind of a weird game. You don't see Pittsburgh and Seattle play very much, I feel like. Um, I just think that Seattle, they know they have to win, and they've got a team that they can beat, and I think that they will.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that this game would and it sucks that I agree with you because I've been pushing this anti-Seahawks narrative for the entire like since the midway through the season, and I think that the Seahawks are going to secure their playoff spot in beating the Steelers, which is just a massive shame for me. Uh, and an egg on my face. The win on the Eagles really is what set it up. Um, but hey, I do think that this whole game will actually be pretty close. So I think I just have more faith in the Seahawks. Mason Rudolph,
Yeah,
he is not the franchise quarterback for the Steelers, but he's better than
no,
Kenny Pickett in my opinion, and he's better than Mitch Trubisky, and that's for certain. Um, I think that he will find a way to keep this close. The Steelers needed to win, so they may be back to their frisky selves.
yeah.
But I'm not willing to
Put your money on them.
yeah, I'm not willing to put my money on them anywhere close. So
Yeah.
yeah, give me the Seahawks, and uh, ashes will be pouring on my head for the rest of the season for my lack of faith. And it really did end up coming to be the fall of Philadelphia. So you guys can screw off for that one. Moving on to the Bengals and Chiefs, which would have been an awesome game if Burrow still had an arm.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but even then, Jamar Chase is injured now, so who knows what that would have looked like.
Yeah.
Um, I This is actually really hard because Browning had an awful game, and I think that could have been the end of his Linsanity run. And I think that the Chiefs will win this game. Uh, it's at Arrowhead. These teams hate each other, dog. Like I
Oh yeah.
like I'm an AFC
Oh
North
yeah.
Twitter, so I see this all the time. There's not a team that I think hates each other. And other than like your divisional rivals, this team hates both of them hate each other, and it's going to be like a fun game because they hate each other so much. But I think the Chiefs do win this one, and win it outright. You need to win. When I tell you that this Bengals defense has been terrible with a capital T, it has been worse than that. And I believe that even an incompetent Chiefs offense at this point is going to be able to put together on them. This could be Travis Kelce's best game.
Yeah. This is we talked a couple weeks ago about those you're at home, you need to dig your cleats into the ground, put your heel in the ground and get to work. That's
Hmm.
what we're gonna see out of the Chiefs on Sunday, I believe. I wouldn't be surprised if it's relatively close. Um,
Yeah.
Without Jamar Chase, this might be a T. Higgins audition. We talked about that earlier. This would have been an amazing game if the Bengals had a little bit better of a record and everybody was healthy.
Yeah.
Just simply because of that rivalry, and the NFL was kind of cooking when they put this one so late in the season with playoff implications on the line, especially in Arrowhead. Um, so I do think Kansas City wins this one. And they bounce back and they kind of, at least flex their muscles a little bit. I'm not too confident that they blow them out. I do think this is going to be a comeback game for Kelsey, like you said, and
Hmm.
hopefully the other receivers, for Chiefs fans' sakes, are able to just kind of get their bearings and just win this one. Um, this next one, this last 4 o'clock game is just weird. It's not going to be one that I'm going to pay attention to much or watch it. The weird situation we talked about with the Broncos. It's got Broncos and Los Angeles Chargers. This quarterback matchup, quite honestly, from a fan's perspective, is not fun. Um, you don't really want to watch it. Stick versus I don't
I
even
think we said
know.
it was Stidham, Jarrett
Stidham. I
Stidham. Yeah.
just I just got a notification per Bleacher Report per The Athletic. Um, Denver is expected to cut Russ in March. Um,
Yeah.
so we will see um what goes on. This is weird. I kind of
Yeah.
wish that they had said this like an hour
Like,
ago
yeah, an
so we
hour.
could have talked about it a little bit more.
Yeah, that was probably a
But
little bit more dynamic than the ooh, they're not playing Russ for the last two games.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um So you guys have something to talk about next week with that.
Yeah.
Um, especially after this performance. It's a toss up. I'll give it to Denver. They're at home. There's possible playoff implications on the line. Sean Payton might be cooking with starting Stidham. I don't know.
Who knows what's going on in
Who
his head?
knows what's going on? This one's a snoozer,
It
to be
is.
honest with you. But I'll go Denver here.
It is a major snoozer. This team is still in playoff contention. Um,
Doesn't feel like it though.
but no, it sucks. And I mean, it all comes down to whether or not they can beat the Raiders. And you got to get through the Chargers first, obviously, but I don't trust Stick to bring it out. I think the real shiners here is the Broncos defense, and I don't think that a completely battered Chargers offense is going to be able to put anything on them. Dude, when I tell you, and I think I say this every single week, this team hits hard. Like that defense hits hard. I wouldn't be surprised if the Chargers end up more injured than they were coming into this game because they play a super physical game and out of the Broncos, and I obviously obviously like that's awful and that's something you hate to see in the game of football. But if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive, the defense is going to be able to do it. So it's going to have to go through them. Finally, let's move on to your team and Packers at Vikings, which is like this is a massive, massive game for both teams. So
Yeah.
I figured I would just let you go.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna go on a fire Joe Barry rant like I did a couple weeks ago. Um, but I this is an interesting one. We have a better quarterback. Um, our front office did a really stupid thing
And
in
Jair Alexander.
disciplining Jair Alexander. There should be a precedent, excuse me, and culture set within an organization. However, benching your star corner when you're going on the road against a divisional rival with playoff implications on the line
And the
where you
best
need to
receiver in the
win your
NFL.
last two games, yeah, that's a dumb move. Um, I understand the why completely. I don't agree with it, however. Um, Sit him next week. Whatever you got to do, fine him, do something else, but suspend him because now he's gonna have ill will against the franchise or the coach or whatever. Did he make some stupid choices? Yes, everybody does. He's the best player on our best player in our secondary for sure this year. Battling through injury. We have a better quarterback. They have a better number one receiver. I don't know if KJ Osborne's better than Watson. I don't even know if Watson
Mhm.
is cleared to play yet. I think we have a better offense, but our defense is a huge question mark, particularly not because of our defensive players. I think we have great players. Our scheme is awful. And if they allow a Nick Mullins led team to carve them up, then we will lose this game. Now, if they just played normal defense, like any normal team would. Let's look at the Las Vegas Raiders. They don't have a crazy number of players that, went off on defense necessarily, but they held the Vikings to 3 points. If the Packers can somehow replicate that formula, they'll win this game by 30 because we've seen how good our offense can score. Now, not to take away from the Vikings defense, it's a very good defense, but I I don't know. This is one that it worries me. Mm, this is this is going to be a prove it game. If Joe Barry wants to keep his job at all, he has to win it. We have to win. Um, and for the love of everything, please don't put LaFleur on the hot seat. He's not the issue.
Yeah.
I think he's actually a very good head coach, and he's just now getting his actual system implemented.
hmm
Um, But I I go Packers. I'm not going to choose against them. I could definitely see the Vikings winning this game, and it's not a shocker to me by any means. Um, but with their backup, we are at their place. It gets very loud there. it's one of those that we'll have to watch and see, but it's kind of like that Vegas and Indianapolis game where it's kind of a coin toss game, really.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be. Knowing watching our personnel, our players, I think that we outmatch them in a lot of positions, but our scheme is just inferior at this point.
And I think that this is pretty close to a playoff game, not necessarily because these teams are both
Yeah,
headed for the playoffs or like one of them is and one of them isn't. But I think that this is just a situation where your season is over, and of course it's if you lose this game and it's a divisional game, so you're naturally going to have bad blood in between it. That added intensity creates a playoff environment, and it's going to be a really exciting game to play. Uh,
yeah, for
and to
sure.
watch for sure. I also think that the Packers are going to win this. You don't want to go against you don't want to go into a division game like this with Nick Mullins. And you also have like potentially the worst rushing attack in the entire league. And I don't trust you. Like if you're Barry, like you're struggling to keep your job, like really, really bad season. This is what you want to see. You want to go against this
Yeah,
core. So who knows what the what the result of all of this is. But I would put my money on the Packers, and
yeah,
I think that Jordan Love is capable enough to bring it home. He's gonna have Your offensive line is gonna have to really hold up against the blitz though, because they play defense in a way that nobody else does. And I think they blitz on like 50% of their plays or something like that. It's pretty crazy. So it's who knows what that's gonna look like, and I think it's a really fun and impactful game. But
yeah.
I
I
got
mean,
on the Packers.
they have Brian Flores, really good coach as their defensive coordinator. So he's always going to keep it interesting. Not a fun guy to play against.
No.
Um, but hey, Brian, come to Titletown. We'd love to have you on our sideline, coordinating our defense. We'd probably be locked into the playoffs at this point if we had you. So there's my pitch. I don't think he's listening, but if you hear it, hey, we'd love to have you.
He's a routine listener.
Um, yeah. Um, so with that being said, um, I think this is a sidebar about the defensive situation. I have never gone into a Packers comment section that doesn't say fire Joe Barry. Here's where I stand with that. I think the change needs to be made. LaFleur needs to stay. He's a good head coach. I think he's bringing in a good culture. Um, Barry, you got to go. You're just not meeting the quota and expectations of this franchise. But I think the Packers are a very classy franchise. Not necessarily saying that just because I'm a fan. I'd say the same thing about the Pittsburgh Steelers with how they had previously to Canada never fired a coach during the season.
Mhm.
Um, and I believe even that they announced it as a mutual parting of ways, which is just a very respectful way to say that he got let go.
Yep.
Um, I don't think the Packers fired Barry with 2 games left. I really hope that he's gone come next season. Um, so that's kind of where we're at with that. But I don't believe there's a Monday night game this week. Is there?
Let me see. Let me hear.
Because it's not showing up on my little schedule here.
Yeah, no, it's looking like it's all Sunday next. Now, I don't
That
know if some of those will be flexed. Um,
yeah, next week is all Sunday. They always do that. Every team plays on Sunday on the last week of the
yeah.
season. Um, but we shall see. Um, so yeah, that is
Yeah,
our picks
that's us
this
for the
week.
week. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate uh you sticking with us this season. Um, it's heating up. Watch out for that Packers game. Watch out for a number of these teams that are trying to land the plane. Uh, so yeah, thank you guys so much for listening, going coming to the end with us. Um, let's maybe next week we'll talk about Russell Wilson's landing spot, and he should be playing, but we'll see. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your week. See ya.